Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Get ready to expand your intuition, connect to God, experience deeper relationships, open your heart and feel more joy, and finally end the chaos in your life. Are you ready to get unstuck and more? You ask, how do I do it? The answer is simple. The time has come for peak spiritual fitness. It starts right now on Spirituality Bootcamp with your host, Kristen White.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here on VividLife Radio, and this is the launch of VividLife University, and I'm your host of the show today, Kristen White, and we are rolling out a brand new program that I am so excited about, and it's called Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 Principles of Spiritual Practice. And before we get started and dig in today, and I have such an exciting guest that I'm going to be bringing on in just a little bit, I want to bring on the founder of VividLife Radio. He's the creator of this whole concept. He hasn't been on the air for quite a while, but I thought it was really fitting to bring on Shane Travis today. So Shane, would you mind joining us?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Kristen, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today for Spirituality Bootcamp and the launch of VividLife University. I'm excited that each one of you are here and glad to be offering this opportunity to you, partnered with Kristen White. Kristen White and I met about 2.5, 3 years ago when she was the first radio host on VividLife Radio. Both of us have similar stories coming from an extreme struggle, and me coming from depression and suicide and eventually climbing up the corporate ladder, then jumping off it and trying to find out what it is that I wanted to do with my life. And all of these 7 principles of spiritual practice have helped me get myself grounded so that I can offer you VividLife.me as well as now VividLife University and introduce you to Kristen White and the 7 principles of spiritual practice.
Thank you so much, Shane. And I know that you and I have talked about the idea of VividLife University for quite some time, a little over a year, and we just felt like now was the time to bring this out to all of you and to offer it as a way for you to really dig in and learn step by step how to grow and deepen spiritually within yourself. There is a lot of energy that's going on out there. It seems definitely, I'm sure, Shane, you would agree that the world is speeding up. And
yes,
without having that daily practice, we can feel like we just get swept away.
Yep, there's a lot of suffering. There is a lot of challenges going on, and everything, like you just said, seems to be really, really speeding up. And it's and being in the spiritual business can be tough sometimes because we're putting out all the inspirational information like VividLife University, VividLife.me, VividLife Radio, and everything that you do as well, Kristen, and everything that all of our wonderful teachers do. We're always pouring out energy, positive energy out to people. And sometimes we become so engulfed with all of this, the business of spirituality and putting out the information and making sure everyone gets the information, making sure they're inspired, and they have programs like this to listen to, YouTube videos to watch, affirmations that get posted daily, quotes, and so on and so forth, that we sometimes forget about ourselves and our spiritual practice. And that's why this program is not only good for those seekers, it's good for the people in the business as well, as a reminder that we need to keep grounded and use the 7 principles in order to keep ourselves grounded so that we have more to put out.
Absolutely, and that's why I created this concept, Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 Principles of Spiritual Practice. And I'm going to tell you what those principles are right now. It's sacred space, and that's what we're talking about today with a very special guest who I'll introduce in just a moment. And then gratitude, forgiveness, visualization, affirmation, meditation, and, of course, prayer. And I want you to think about this as a form of basic training. You know, just like you mentioned, Shane, it's the basics, because oftentimes we get so caught up in the higher mind, the big vision, all the details that go into it, that we forget the basics. And then we suddenly find ourselves over a period of time ungrounded, unhappy, confused about where to go. And often, I believe, whether you're an athlete, whether you're an artist, whether you're a musician, whether you're involved in any kind of expression, creative, spiritual, inspired, going back and anchoring in those basic principles often will take you to the next level and give you that breakthrough that you're searching for.
100%. And thank you so much for offering the 7 principles of spiritual practice for all of our listeners this evening. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining us. Enjoy your time tonight with Stephanie, and please be sure to join the last 6 of the 7 principles as well, and to invite your friends because it's going to be full of inspiration, full of tips and advice, and just full of so much valuable information from heart-centered teachers that I've collected from all around the world that are absolutely the brightest and the best in their class. So thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and enjoy your time with Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shane. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank you. I know that VividLife has grown tremendously over the years, thousands and thousands of listeners and shows and inspiration and teaching, and all of this has been channeled through you, the creator and the founder, Shane Travis. And so thank you for your continued commitment and inspiration and really your passion, because you have a huge passion for this. So without further ado, we are going to start talking about the concept of sacred space. And first, a little bit of background about me before I bring on our guest, Stephanie Phelps. In 2006, I found that my personal life was in chaos, and there's just a lot of different things going on, and in business and relationships, things like that. And I thought, well, gosh, if our thoughts attract our reality, what am I thinking about? Okay, so what's going on in there? And I decided at the time, and I didn't have this deep spiritual connection in that space. I was just a mom of 3 kids and, trying to figure it out. I thought, well, the only way I know to shift my mind is to start to learn how to quiet it, to learn how to meditate. And I didn't even know where to turn in the first place to start doing that. But over the course of several months, and then, it rolled out over several years, I just started getting up really early in the morning and going into a special place that I had created, and we'll call it sacred space. This is the very beginning step. And I would sit in there in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I started with some basic alms. And then it moved on, and I started practicing gratitude and then forgiveness. And I used visualization techniques. And it wasn't from any one religion or spiritual practice or culture. It was a combination of a lot of different things. It was just whatever resonated with me at the time. And I used, again, meditation and prayer. And I started to notice over time gradually, because I did this on a regular basis, it was my habit, that things started to evolve for me. And within the course of this time, all of my intuitive channels opened up. I wrote a book, and things started to magically click into place. And things that may have seemed impossible suddenly became possible. So I just want you to understand how powerful daily spiritual practice is. It really is the cornerstone. It's the key. If you use these principles, you can incorporate whatever cultural tradition, practice, religion, whatever you'd like, but the key is to commit to that daily habit, that spiritual principle, and you will see profound differences in your life. So I'd love to take this moment to introduce who our guest is today, and this is my absolute favorite topic inside the principles, and that's sacred space. So I'm going to bring on the expert, Stephanie Phelps. She's a sought-after intuitive spiritual guide, a healer, and a teacher. She's the founder of White Horse Journeys, and her passion is to bridge heaven and earth and assist others on their path. She's created fabulous workshops. She does these wonderful, beautiful ceremonies, especially down in Arizona where she lives. She also offers personal energy sessions and sacred tours. Now, Stephanie has also experienced many different cultures and customs in the course of her extensive global travels. I'm sure she'll share with us a few of those stories today. But this has enlightened her to all the teachings of the indigenous, shamanic, and medicine people from around the world. So she's going to share with us some of this wisdom through her she has beautiful guided meditations, and I'm just really excited to invite and welcome Stephanie Phelps to the show. Welcome, Stephanie.
Well, thank you, Kristen. I want to first start off by saying thank you for hosting me, and thank you to Shane for the invitation and his vision. I am so excited to be a teacher for the VividLife University, and I think it's a wonderful way to connect with people from all over the world. So, again, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share with our listeners and students the possibilities for creating sacred space. And you said that I live in Arizona. Yes, I do, and boy, is it ever hot here today.
Summertime in the Southwest.
Yes, it's been a hot, scorching day. But I want to share with everyone really how I got started on my spiritual path, because when I moved to Arizona, I had been living abroad for almost 13 years. I lived in Wales and Papua New Guinea, and then I found myself in Seattle. And one day my husband said, I think we ought to move to the desert. And within a day, our house had sold, and we were on our plane coming down to our new home in Scottsdale. And this is the place where I really got in touch with the truth of who I am, and I found my passion. And this happened through a series of synchronicities where I was guided to create a medicine wheel on the land out in our backyard, so to speak, even though it's all wide open desert. And it was through that co-creation with Spirit that I learned about the art of creating sacred space. And, you know, a medicine wheel, we're going to cover a little bit about that in the upcoming series, but in its simplest form, it's a circle of stones. However, there's so much dimension and so many teachings around the medicine wheel. And when I created this medicine wheel, I created it with the intention that it be a place for healing and transformation. And people started coming, and it turned into this multifaceted modality that touched people in a very deep way. It connected them with the rhythms and cycles of nature, and there were so many wonderful experiences for everybody in my sacred space. People brought crystals and stones from all over the world, and when I would look at it, I would think, this is like the United Nations of the Stone People, because there were stones from sacred sites from all over.
You know, sacred space is so powerful that way, Stephanie, and what a beautiful story, because I love what you're talking about. Because what it shows is that when we commit certain energies to a place, that energy grows and expands beyond what was originally placed there.
Absolutely. I never in my wildest dreams thought that that would be the catalyst to take me to where I stand today. And I believe that sacred space is a special place for you. It's a place that we connect in our own special way with everything that we deem sacred. And it's important to create that kind of focus for our awareness. It's important to have a place that we can go to strengthen our spiritual connections. Excuse me. So, you know, people ask me all the time, what is sacred space? And I would just like to say to all of our listeners that it's any place that is special to you. It's a place that you create for yourself. And it can be a man-made structure that you go to, like a church or a synagogue or a temple. It could be an ancient ruin. It can even be a place in nature. Trees make beautiful natural altars. In fact, I have a special tree that I like to visit on my way to Sedona, and I call her the grandmother. And she's this old, vibrant cedar tree. And whenever I see her, I feel like her branches are outstretched and welcome me to come sit at the base of her trunk. And when I go there, I meditate, I feel comforted, I feel nurtured. And whenever I leave that place, I always feel like I have more clarity. And those are some of the benefits from creating sacred space.
You know, I love what you're talking about. It's such a beautiful image that not only can you have sacred space, whether it's in your home or you're sitting under a gracious old tree out in nature, it's important, it sounds, to just find that place that you feel the energy that's in alignment with who you are, and you can get into that place of inner reflection and peace and all the beautiful things that flow out of being in that space.
Absolutely. And, that is one of the reasons why we create sacred space, to have that place of peace, to find that place within ourselves. When you create sacred space, it really is the foundation for your spiritual work. It will nourish you and your spiritual practice. And it's important to take time out to still the mind and connect with what's important to you. Kristen, I always say I feel like people have more of a relationship with their iPhones and their cars than they do the budding of a beautiful tree or hearing the whispers in the wind and connecting with that place within. So, when you take time out to create a special place to go to, it becomes more inviting and you have more of an inclination to spend time there. And through that, it will bring you balance and peace, and it will strengthen your being.
It's interesting because I think about my own experience with sacred space. And when I decided to I took over a room inside my house. And what were some of the elements that I had inside that space? So at least for myself, I had a comfortable chair that was my special chair. I wrote a book in that chair. Like, I love that chair. That chair is so worn out now. Like, everyone was like, get rid of that chair. But, it was my chair. And then inside that space, I also created an altar. And on the altar was crystals and things from nature that resonated with me, and affirmations, and just pieces of the practice that I was working on at that time. My altar was very much a living altar, and I used water and flowers and different pieces that meant something to me. Can you speak to us about what are some of the things that we can place inside our sacred space? Maybe making a medicine wheel or something that helps it feel more sacred to us.
Well, you kind of touched on a lot of the things that you can do when you go to create your sacred space. I want to invite our listeners to create a special or sacred place for them over the next few weeks. And the first thing I always ask is, what are you going to use it for? Is it going to simply be a place of beauty, or do you want it for your yoga practice? And those are the things that will guide you as to what you might want to incorporate in your space. It can be as simple as carving out a little bit of space for yourself, like your bedside stand, and having a candle there. And you can have a daily practice of lighting that candle and have it be a reminder to you of your light within. And when you create sacred space, it could be an altar. And in that altar, like you said, you want to put all your special things, all the things that have significance and meaning to you, whether it's a collection of rocks or a feather. And you mentioned fresh flowers, which is one of my favorite things. Nothing makes me feel more joyful than fresh flowers. They're colorful, they're beautiful, they connect you with the living energy that flows through all life, anything that you deem special and sacred to yourself. You might create an ancestral altar and have photographs of your loved ones and your ancestors. It could be a statue of spiritual imagery like a Buddha or Kuan Yin. It's, again, the things that bring you joy, the things that have meaning to you that help you connect with your inner space and your heart. Let's face it, no one wants to do a yoga practice in a messy, crowded room. So carve out a corner in your home that's specifically for that daily practice of yoga, and make your mat your special sacred space.
I think that what you're saying, or I know what you're saying, is that a lot of this is about the intention that we put inside the space that we're creating, and how do we charge that energy. And talking about the intentions that we create, and when you made your medicine wheel. So please continue.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really about creating relationship and creating a relationship with the energy that you're working with. So if you come from a place of centeredness and heartfelt intention, I believe connecting with that purity within and the Great Spirit or Source, whatever you may call it, is that place that brings in that, it's kind of like an invitation to the divine. Because when we're creating sacred space, we all create our own personal bridge joining heaven and earth. And it is an invitation to the divine into our midst. And we are creating a space that is special to us, that supports our work, our spiritual practice, and how we want to move through our life, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us a little bit about when you bridge people between heaven and earth. What does that mean?
I think that it's about having your own personal relationship with Spirit and who you are and how you connect. I was having a conversation with my friend Keith the other day, and we were talking about how we set up our sacred space and we put protection into our sacred space. And we were talking about how you wouldn't just walk up to a stranger on the street and ask them to watch over you and watch over your home. You want to know what you're working with and have a relationship with that energy. And these are some of the things that I'm going to be talking about in the upcoming course and series about creating sacred space, so that I can give people a framework for creating their sacred space, and then they can add their own flavor, texture, color, and really make it their own. Another thing that I like to say, Kristen, and I use this a lot when I create ceremony for the community, which is one of my passions, is when people turn up and they want to, I always say that we consciously show up and we engage the mysteries, and that we're informing the mysteries as much as they're informing us. So the universe sings when we consciously show up and co-create. And then that place of co-creation is the place of passion. And when we find our passion, that is the place of manifestation. So whether you're manifesting a sacred space or something larger in your life, this is a wonderful place to go and connect.
So when you talk about co-creation, do you mean co-creation in community with other people who are sharing the sacred space, or do you mean co-creation in unity with other aspects of ourselves?
I'm talking about other aspects of ourselves and the spiritual team that we work with, whether we're calling in our angels to work with us, or we're calling in the universal directions, or we're calling in the Great Spirit, Creator, the one that's known by 1,000 names. That is your sacred relationship with the divine. That is the place of co-creation, where you get in touch with yourself and what's in your heart, and get to that place of knowingness, still yourself, where you hear that inner voice, and you can find that doorway to take you where you want to go. And I believe by creating sacred space, it opens up that space for us to feel more connected. There's so many distractions in our daily lives. The dogs are barking, the TV's going, you just get home from work, the kids are yelling. We get in our car, we turn on the radio. We very seldom take the time to tune all of that out and just be. Go to that place of silence within. That is the place where you connect with Spirit. That's the place where I go when I go out into nature. And, my biggest teacher has been nature, because what I found when I'm in those places, that are quiet, whether it's a public park or up in the mountains, but it's my quiet time, my place where I can find a place to go within. I have learned that all of nature is God waiting to be heard, that all of nature will speak to you. That inner voice becomes activated, and you can receive messages. You can receive clarity, peace, inspiration, all the things that you need to propel you forward on your spiritual path. But you have to take the time. It's a discipline. Take time out to connect with that side of yourself. For me, it's being in nature. For another one, it might be on their yoga mat. For another one, it might be toning in the morning. Whatever it is for you.
That's so beautiful, and I love what you're talking about. And we were just talking about sacred space, and we were talking about the natural world and how powerful the natural world is in communicating with us when we actually are willing to open up our hearts and even our ears to listen.
So, if you take time out, the bottom line is it's important for any spiritual practice to take time out that will nourish you and still the mind and connect with what's important to you.
What I think would be amazingly helpful to those of us who are listening and we're thinking about creating this sacred space, and where do we start? Do we just go walk around outside? How do we get started in this whole process?
Okay, let me give you 3 steps you can take, because you want your sacred space to be a safe place. Perhaps a place that's always there that you can visit anytime, and it's a place you want to develop a relationship with. So the first step is you're going to create sacred space, and you're going to ask yourself, what are you going to use it for? And then once you decide what you're going to use your space for, you're going to add all of your special things there. Make it your own. Make it as colorful and as precious to you as you want it to be. And then the second thing that I think is important to do, and I do this with all of my spiritual work, when I go to my sacred space, I want my environment to be physically and spiritually cleaned and protected so that I can easily connect with the voice of spirit. So it's sort of like, Kristen, when you're listening to radio and you're listening from station to station and there's a lot of static, you want to find the clearest station. You want to be able to tune into the clearest channel possible. So with creating the sacred space that I have, I will remove and eliminate all the static so that I can find the clearest connection. And how do I do that? I do that with smudging with sage, using the smoke of the sage to clear any dense or stagnant energy. And if our listeners have a problem with smoke, they can use other ways to clear their space. They might use sound like bells or rattles. They might use a drum. The vibration of a drum is so powerful that it instantly gets the energy moving. What you want to do is use your intuition. And I say that because it's kind of like have you ever walked into a room where an argument has just taken place? The energy in the room is thick. It's dense. You can feel it. When you walk into that kind of environment, it feels uncomfortable. So when you are smudging or using sound, and we're going to cover a variety of ways to clear space in the upcoming series, use your intuition to follow that energy and dispel it, and the room will start to feel lighter and more vibrant. It will feel clean. So it's about feeling and guiding your intuition to let you know. I want to touch on smudging just briefly because it's probably best known as a Native American tradition. However, there are many different cultures and traditions, from the ancient Egyptians to Catholic priests to Buddhist temples that have used smudging for purification. As a child, I always remember the Catholic priest carrying an incense burner down the aisle towards the altar on Easter Sunday, and that smell of myrrh and frankincense always invoked something within me, that memory. But there are many different things that you can use for clearing your space. The most important thing is to approach it with sacred intent and focus. I've seen people light sticks of sage, and they start waving them around the room or waving them around people. And I've
seen
myself,
that too.
what are the thoughts behind that?
Right.
Have they connected with the spirit of the plant? Have they communicated their intention for smudging? Did they choose the right incense or herb for the job? And how did they dispose of the ashes after the ceremony? And, these are things that perhaps our listeners are familiar with, perhaps they've considered them, perhaps not. There is a protocol, and in my upcoming series in the fall, I want to be able to share some of the ways that you can prepare sacred space in a good way. How to incorporate some of these practices that we've talked about and use them in your daily life.
Stephanie, I want to stop you for just a second because, for all of our listeners, I want to let them know that we are going to be offering a more in-depth advanced class on this topic of the sacred space with master teacher Stephanie Phelps with White Horse Journeys. Because what's happening is, there's so many details. I mean, we're talking about, how do we cleanse the energy in a room? I know what you're talking about when you walk into a room and there's been an argument. It feels sticky. The energy feels sticky. I know that when my house was on the market and, after I'd had that agent open house, I walked back in and it's like you can just feel the words in the air of, people discussing your home. If anybody's ever had their car broken into or had something happen that was, we're talking about some negative things, but it's also positive things. Sometimes it just takes some energy, whether it's sound or smoke or intention, to just take us back to neutral. And so I love what you're talking about, and there's so many aspects to this that we could never possibly cover in just this very brief hour today, but I know in the fall, through VividLife University, you will be offering an advanced class, which is 4 weeks, where people can work with you directly. It's only offered to a very limited number. They'll be able to ask questions, and I know you'll also have some worksheets and some things that they can work on very specifically on their own personal sacred space. And we'll give all of you listening the opportunity to enroll in that in the future, like right after the show. But for now, that's what she's talking about in the upcoming classes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Because there are going to be so many wonderful things that we're going to cover in that class and in that series. Besides smudging and clearing space, we're going to talk about protection and offerings, creating personal and ceremonial altars. We're going to talk about the universal directions and how to open your sacred circles in your sacred space, medicine tools, a little bit about ceremony. I hope to be able to share with our students so many aspects of gathering your medicine, your power to create that special place for you. So let me talk about that third thing, because we've covered, you've found your sacred space and you've added your special touches to make your own. You've cleared it. And then the third thing that you can do is it's like you want to tune into the higher frequencies and add protection. You want to set up the energies around your sacred space that supports you and the work you're going to do. So when I talk about protection, it can take many, many forms, and there's many layers to work with. But for today and for our listeners, to make it a little more simple for what we're creating here, I would like to ask them that they invoke or call in their angels or perhaps the spiritual team that they work with, and know that your spiritual team they're always there. They're just waiting for the invitation. And so you do this with your love and your will. Again, it's through heartfelt intention. And again, that is where we each build our own personal bridge joining heaven and earth. It's that invitation to the divine. So
what a beautiful, I want to talk about that for a second, because you just said the most beautiful statement. And I love that vision of a bridge between heaven and earth and the divine. And, I want to talk about this for just a moment, because I know we have listeners out there, okay? And they're sitting here and they're thinking, heaven, the divine, a bridge. Well, can I get that in church? Can I get that at the synagogue? I mean, what exactly is she talking about? I thought the sacred space was, right at the corner, underneath the steeple and where everybody sits on Sunday. Like, I'm not quite sure I understand what she's talking about. So can we just talk for just a minute about how we can create that bridge, that beautiful image that you shared with us, that bridge between heaven and earth, and be still inside what we maybe normally practice? I mean, how does it all fit together, Stephanie?
Well, I think I would like to address that creating sacred space is non-denominational. That, we all come from a diversity of religions and spiritual traditions. And the thing that we have in common is that they really, truly all spring from the same source. I go by that old saying, there are many roads that lead to Rome, and we each get to find our own way home. And when I connect with my personal bridge, I am connecting with that unnameable source of conscious energy that flows through all things in this infinite universe, Kristen. It's the God thought that makes the seed grow. It's the tiniest particle of space matter to the oceans of the world. It's the visible, it's the invisible. It is the stuff that connects us. It's the cosmic glue that I call love. This is our common bond. This is the thing that we can connect with. It is through our love, the love that we carry in our hearts and our minds, our conscious intention to make that connection that creates our sacred space. And at the end of the day, that is the space that we carry within ourselves. This outward expression of sacred space is a wonderful way for our physicality to connect in every day with something that is important to us, to take us to that place that we deem sacred within ourselves. So, I love the diversity of all traditions and all beliefs, and we get to share and learn from each other. And we each get to honor the sacred in our own special way. So it's up to the individual how they want to create and make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting. I mean, not everybody is one religion or one culture. We're not all Christian. We're not all Buddhist. We're not all studying the Kabbalah. We come from, I know the listeners on VividLife are from all over the world, and we have a lot of different beliefs. There's probably people on the show who believe in the nature spirits and the elemental realm and the angels and the fairies, and we can be informed by so many physical and non-physical sources. Let's just agree, right? There's so many messages that if we open ourselves to be willing to listen, who knows what exciting communications might come our way inside this sacred space.
Absolutely. The veils become thin, and we get to connect with the mysteries, and that's where the magic is, and that's where the fun is. And those are the things that propel me forward on my spiritual journey. When you're in that flow and the synchronicities of every day are kind of ordinary, everyday occurrences, you know that you are closely connected with what I call heaven. Those veils become very translucent, and that's where the magic is for me.
You know, I love myself, the natural world is like always speaking to me. And so I remember that I went through this phase when it was a lot about the spider, okay? And so it was like, oh, you know, and I don't love spiders, but spiders were speaking to me a lot. And I remember that I was, you know, and when that happens, I always ask, you know, the animal or the insect, I'm like, well, what are you informing me of? What is the message? And then I go inside my sacred space within and I listen. And so it's interesting because I was doing some shamanic training, and I had my inside the medicine wheel that we had created, and I had a rock that my teacher had given me. And he's like, I want you to meditate with the rock and see where it's been and what it intends for you. So I'm meditating with this rock, and I'm so excited to get it because I knew he had gotten it from South America. And I'm meditating with the rock, and it says, I want to go back. And I'm like, wait a minute, I just got you. Like, how can you want to go back? And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put you on my nightstand overnight, and I'm going to ask you again in the morning. Because sometimes we negotiate, you know.
Well, you know, that brings up something interesting, because one of the things that I hope to share in this course is that, you know, when we take things from nature, we really need to connect with it and ask permission.
Right.
You know, and we create a void in nature when we take things. So we're going to cover how when you...
Absolutely.
Do you have an invitation? When you go into these sacred sites, do you have an invitation? Have you connected with the spirits of the land to see if it's okay if you come into their domain? You know, these are all the subtle things. There's layers upon layers that we can get connected with. Right. And I bet that spider turned up for you when you were writing your book.
It definitely did. And it also turned up, though, it's interesting, so I decided to take the stone back to the creek because it was on this beautiful property, and, you know, you could walk down to the creek. And so I'm walking down this path in nature, and across the entire path is this gigantic spider web with a big red spider. And I look at it and I think, wow. And so I walk around it. And I was like, okay, clearly there is, because to me spider means story. Okay, what's the story that you're weaving and creating? And, you know, for me, red, it was about, you know, it was like my root chakra, my core story. So I walked around it, and I got down to the creek, and I held onto that stone, and I thought, I'm really disappointed to throw you back because I know that you're from a special place, and you came to me from a teacher that I admire. And I tossed it back in the water, and it was interesting. I watched it kind of drift down to the bottom, and it lodged itself underneath a much larger stone. So I knew that it was safe. I knew that my history inside that stone, because I knew I was really cleansing something, was in a safe space. And as I walked back up, the entire web was gone.
Oh, wow.
Powerful. It just disappeared. Story. And so I thought, and I'm getting the chills of confirmation again as I tell you the story, is that, you know, when we pay attention to nature in a different aspect of our mind, when it's not so busy, when it's quiet, like what you've talked about so many times so beautifully during this show, that it will inform us of how we're doing, quite honestly. Are we doing okay? And it will show us time and time again, you know.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
So tell us a little bit, because we are you know, near the end of the show. I told you it goes by so fast. And first of all, I just want to thank everyone who's joined us for this first part of Spirituality Boot Camp. Stephanie Phelps and I have been speaking about sacred space and how you can create sacred space not only inside your home or in nature, but also within yourself. Is that, Stephanie, we talked about how we can create sacred space, not only inside our homes, but also out in nature and within ourselves. So tell us all just a little bit more about how we can work with you, where we can find your website, and what you'll be offering in the advanced class.
My website is simply stephaniephelps.com. And also I want to invite people to connect with me through Facebook, Stephanie Phelps White Horse Journeys. It's where I post my events and my daily musings and insights, and I try to give some information that might be useful to make you think a little bit more deeply, or sometimes it's so simple that hopefully it just can make your heart sing on the day. But I'm pretty current with my White Horse Journeys Facebook page, so I'd love for people to connect with me through there. Again, I covered some of the topics for the upcoming course in the fall, and I'm going to be focusing on the fundamentals of the hows, the whys, the whens, the wheres, but it is not just targeted for beginners. This will be a course that no matter where you are in your spiritual path, you will gain insightful and useful knowledge that you can incorporate into your daily life and your daily spiritual practice.
Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. And I do think that when we return to even what we consider the basics, when we are willing to be a beginner again, oftentimes we find some new inspiration for ourselves.
Yeah, there are layers upon layers, and we can always keep ourselves open for learning and growth. That's one of the things I love to do, bring people together for learning and growth and laughter. That's what makes my heart sing. And speaking of that, something that really makes my heart sing is I'm going to be taking 10 people to Sedona on a 3-day spiritual retreat. And I'm going to be posting the details on my website. They're already up, actually, and also on my Facebook page. But it will be it's a small, intimate group of only 10 people, so people will pretty much have access to me every day to get all their questions answered. And I like to share this tour. I do it once a year. It's always very successful. We connect with Earth Wisdom teachings, the stone people, rock art sites and Native American ruins, vortexes in Sedona. And it's just an inspiring, wonderful time. So check that out, too.
Absolutely. And to any of you listening, I just adore Sedona. I have had some powerful personal experiences in there among the red rocks. And if you haven't been there to visit, Stephanie, you sound like you're offering just a beautiful invitation for people to join you inside the sacred space that you create. And what might be some of the things that people could possibly expect to experience while they're there?
Well, we will be doing fire ceremony, sweat lodge ceremony with a Native American medicine man, excuse me, connecting with the vortex sites. We go up into a birthing cave, and I don't want to give too many details away for that because I like to have a little bit of mystery to make it more magical and fun.
Yeah.
But every day, we have Dr. Emoto to thank for Messages in the Water. I'm sure our listeners are probably familiar with his work. And he put on the map that water has consciousness. Well, you have to remember, listeners, that everything has consciousness. Not only the water, but fire, air, and earth has consciousness. And we see that in a place like Sedona because it's living, vibrant energy that we're connecting with. The earth is so alive here. We're lucky to have a sacred site like Sedona right in our own backyard. People go all the way to Machu Picchu and Stonehenge, and I'll tell you, there's much magic and mystery in Sedona as there are some of these other well-known sacred sites around the world. So my job is to connect people with that energy.
I know that Sedona is at the base of a 260 million-year-old ocean. So all of Sedona used to be underwater. And you raised such an important point that sometimes when we feel in our lives that we have been heading down a certain path or in a particular direction, that what we might need the most is to have a little interruption in that path, to hit the reset button. And it sounds like what you're inviting our listeners to is an opportunity to hit the reset button. And thank you so much for that beautiful invitation.
Well, I love the reset button analogy. So we'll be doing stargazing and drumming circles as well. It's a wonderful time, and I'd love to have any of our listeners join me.
So, Stephanie, share with us one more time, what is your website?
StephaniePhelps.com.
Perfect. And to all of you listening, whether you're here with us live or through the rebroadcast, which will be made available for the next week until our show, which is going to be coming up next week, we're going to be covering gratitude with our guest teacher, Sharon Quirt. And this is a wonderful topic, and I will tell you, a very powerful transformational tool for moving your life and your business and your relationships forward. Is that practice of gratitude. And I know I practiced it often inside my sacred space as part of my everyday practice. Now, Stephanie is going to be offering in the fall, she'll be one of our professors at VividLife University, and she'll be offering an advanced class, which will run for 4 weeks. And we will be sending you out a link via email along with a replay after the show so that you can register for her Sacred Space class. And Stephanie, I understand that you will be allowing people to call you in and taking some callers and also have some supporting worksheets and, just tools that people can use inside the class?
Yes, absolutely. There will be some worksheets and practical things that we'll get to experience and do, and we'll have how can I say, kind of a talking circle.
Exciting.
Where we'll come together and we'll be able to share our experiences and how we are creating sacred space. So it should cover, all the questions anyone has and take it even deeper.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Stephanie Phelps, thank you so much for being us. You're the founder of White Horse Journeys. Your class sounds amazing, and that retreat, beautiful. What a wonderful opportunity. So to all of you, you've been listening to Spirituality Boot Camp, and I'm your host, Kristen White, and I'm really excited to meet with you next week as we take the next principle of spiritual practice of gratitude. So until then, have a wonderful night.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.
YouTube videos to watch, affirmations that get posted daily, quotes, and so on and so forth, that we sometimes forget about ourselves and our spiritual practice. And that's why this program is not only good for those seekers, it's good for the people in the business as well, as a reminder that we need to keep grounded and use the 7 principles in order to keep ourselves grounded so that we have more to put out.
Absolutely, and that's why I created this concept, Spirituality Boot Camp, the 7 principles of spiritual practice. And I'm going to tell you what those principles are right now. It's sacred space, and that's what we're talking about today with a very special guest who I'll introduce in just a moment. And then gratitude, forgiveness, visualization, affirmation, meditation, and, of course, prayer. And I want you to think about this as a form of basic training. Just like you mentioned, Shane, it's the basics, because oftentimes we get so caught up in the higher mind, the big vision, all the details that go into it that we forget the basics. And then we suddenly find ourselves over a period of time ungrounded, unhappy, confused about where to go. And often, I believe, whether you're an athlete, whether you're an artist, whether you're a musician, whether you're involved in any kind of expression, creative, spiritual, inspired, going back and anchoring in those basic principles often will take you to the next level and give you that breakthrough that you're searching for.
100%. And thank you so much for offering the 7 principles of spiritual practice for all of our listeners this evening. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining us. Enjoy your time tonight with Stephanie, and please be sure to join the last 6 of
Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Get ready to expand your intuition, connect to God, experience deeper relationships, open your heart and feel more joy, and finally end the chaos in your life. Are you ready to get unstuck and more? You ask, how do I do it? The answer is simple. The time has come for peak spiritual fitness. It starts right now on Spirituality Bootcamp with your host, Kristen White.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here on VividLife Radio, and this is the launch of VividLife University, and I'm your host of the show today, Kristen White, and we are rolling out a brand new program that I am so excited about, and it's called Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 Principles of Spiritual Practice. And before we get started and dig in today, and I have such an exciting guest that I'm going to be bringing on in just a little bit, I want to bring on the founder of VividLife Radio. He's the creator of this whole concept. He hasn't been on the air for quite a while, but I thought it was really fitting to bring on Shane Travis today. So Shane, would you mind joining us?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Kristen, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today for Spirituality Bootcamp and the launch of VividLife University. I'm excited that each one of you are here and glad to be offering this opportunity to you, partnered with Kristen White. Kristen White and I met about 2.5, 3 years ago when she was the first radio host on VividLife Radio. Both of us have similar stories, coming from an extreme struggle, and me coming from depression and suicide, and eventually climbing up the corporate ladder, then jumping off it and trying to find out what it is that I wanted to do with my life. And all of these 7 principles of spiritual practice have helped me get myself grounded so that I can offer you VividLife.me as well as now VividLife University, and introduce you to Kristen White and the 7 principles of spiritual practice.
Thank you so much, Shane. And I know that you and I have talked about the idea of VividLife University for quite some time, a little over a year, and we just felt like now was the time to bring this out to all of you and to offer it as a way for you to really dig in and learn step by step how to grow and deepen spiritually within yourself. There is a lot of energy that's going on out there. It seems definitely, I'm sure, Shane, you would agree that the world is speeding up. And
yes,
without having that daily practice, we can feel like we just get swept away.
Yep, there's a lot of suffering. There is a lot of challenges going on, and everything, like you just said, seems to be really, really speeding up. And it's and being in the spiritual business can be tough sometimes because we're putting out all the inspirational information like VividLife University, VividLife.me, VividLife Radio, and everything that you do as well, Kristen, and everything that all of our wonderful teachers do. We're always pouring out energy, positive energy out to people. And sometimes we become so engulfed with all of this, the business of spirituality, and putting out the information and making sure everyone gets the information, making sure they're inspired, and they have programs like this to listen to the 7 principles as well, and to invite your friends because it's going to be full of inspiration, full of tips and advice, and just full of so much valuable information from heart-centered teachers that I've collected from all around the world that are absolutely the brightest and the best in their class. So thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and enjoy your time with Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shane. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank you. I know that VividLife has grown tremendously over the years, thousands and thousands of listeners and shows and inspiration and teaching, and all of this has been channeled through you, the creator and the founder, Shane Travis. And so thank you for your continued commitment and inspiration and really your passion, because you have a huge passion for this. So without further ado, we are going to start talking about the concept of sacred space. And first, a little bit of background about me before I bring on our guest, Stephanie Phelps. In 2006, I found that my personal life was in chaos, and there's just a lot of different things going on, and in business and relationships, things like that. And I thought, well, gosh, if our thoughts attract our reality, what am I thinking about? Okay, so what's going on in there? And I decided at the time, and I didn't have this deep spiritual connection in that space. I was just a mom of 3 kids and, trying to figure it out. I thought, well, the only way I know to shift my mind is to start to learn how to quiet it, to learn how to meditate. And I didn't even know where to turn in the first place to start doing that. But over the course of several months, and then, it rolled out over several years, I just started getting up really early in the morning and going into a special place that I had created, and we'll call it sacred space. This is the very beginning step. And I would sit in there in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I started with some basic ohms. And then it moved on, and I started practicing gratitude and then forgiveness. And I used visualization techniques. And it wasn't from any one religion or spiritual practice or culture. It was a combination of a lot of different things. It was just whatever resonated with me at the time. And I used, again, meditation and prayer. And I started to notice over time gradually, because I did this on a regular basis, it was my habit, that things started to evolve for me. And within the course of this time, all of my intuitive channels opened up. I wrote a book, and things started to magically click into place. And things that may have seemed impossible suddenly became possible. So I just want you to understand how powerful daily spiritual practice is. It really is the cornerstone. It's the key. If you use these principles, you can incorporate whatever cultural tradition, practice, religion, whatever you'd like, but the key is to commit to that daily habit, that spiritual principle, and you will see profound differences in your life. So I'd love to take this moment to introduce who our guest is today, and this is my absolute favorite topic inside the principles, and that's sacred space. So I'm going to bring on the expert, Stephanie